Welcome to our family, everyone. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Before we begin, I want to ask you something personal. Think of a name, any name that means something to you, and share it in the comments. I might just use it in my next story. And knowing your names makes this feel less like I'm speaking into the void and more like we're having coffee together. Because that's what this is about. Real people, real hearts, and the choices that define us. Today, I'm going to tell you about Michael Turner. He's someone many of you will recognize, not because you know him personally, but because his story mirrors something that lives inside all of us. It's the story of what happens when the person you promised forever to wakes up one day and realizes they've lost themselves in the promise. It's about quiet dignity and the kind of pain that doesn't scream but whispers in the dark. Michael was 58 years old when his world shifted on its axis. For 30 years he had worn the badge of a police officer, but what I want you to understand is that this job didn't just shape his career, it shaped who he was as a man. He learned that respect matters more than being right, that silence can sometimes speak louder than words, and that showing up, day after day, is how you build a life. These weren't lessons written in a handbook. They were carved into his bones through decades of choosing to be steady when everything around him was chaos. His wife, Linda, was 56. She had spent her life helping to shape young minds, running a school, building systems that helped others grow. She was independent in the way that comes from competence. She didn't need validation because she had always trusted herself. These are important things to know because what happened between them wasn't a failure of either person. It was a failure of two people to see that they were becoming strangers while sharing the same bed. They had a daughter, Emily, who watched her parents drift like continents, moving apart so slowly that nobody noticed until the space between them was impossible to cross. Emily tried to be the bridge, but bridges don't work when both sides are pulling away. Let me tell you what a 30-year marriage looks like when you're living it. It's not the honeymoon phase where every touch feels electric. It's something quieter, something that requires faith. It's the morning coffee you make for each other without being asked. The evening walks where you don't need to fill the silence with words because your presence says everything. It's knowing, with absolute certainty, that when you come home, someone will be there. Or so Michael thought. But people change. Sometimes they change slowly, like seasons. And sometimes they change in ways that shock you because you weren't paying attention. Linda started to change this way. The phone became an extension of her hand. Weekends filled with new friends and new activities. Michael noticed, of course he noticed, but he also made a choice. He chose to trust that she needed space, that this was a phase, that the woman he married would return. The problem was, Linda was becoming someone new, and she wasn't bringing Michael along on that journey. It's fascinating, isn't it, how the people closest to us can feel the furthest away. They can sit across the dinner table, and you feel like you're looking at them through frosted glass. So when Michael finally asked, "Are you okay?" and Linda smiled that smile that didn't reach her eyes and said she was just enjoying her life more, something inside him understood that the distance between them had become a chasm. Their 30th anniversary came around. Michael did what men of his generation often do. He tried to reach back into the past, hoping he could pull something forward. He took Linda to the restaurant where he had proposed all those years ago. He brought the photograph from that night, the one where they looked at each other like they had invented love. He probably held his breath as he showed it to her, hoping to see recognition in her eyes, hoping to see the woman he married look back at him. Instead, he saw indifference. That, I think, is the cruelest feeling in a marriage. Not anger, not betrayal, but the simple absence of care. And then she said the words that would reshape everything. "I've wasted my best years being with you." Stop there for a moment. Let that sentence sit with you. How many of us have felt that? How many of us have feared saying it or hearing it? Michael listened to her tell him that the life they built together, the memories, the shared struggles, the ordinary moments that add up to a lifetime, was a waste. And you know what he did? He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He didn't rage. He stood up and he walked away. People often mistake silence for weakness, but there's a kind of strength in knowing that some things are beyond negotiation. Michael had spent his career understanding that dignity is not negotiable. You can lose almost everything, but if you lose respect, for yourself or the person destroying you, then you lose the thing that matters most. So he chose to respect himself by accepting that he could not be chosen by someone who had already unchosen him. The days that followed were like moving through fog. The legal paperwork, the division of assets, the selling of the house where they had built their life together. But here's what Michael discovered in that small, quiet apartment. He was still alive. The person he was didn't disappear because Linda decided she didn't want him. He was still capable of morning coffee, of evening walks, of being present. Linda, meanwhile, discovered something different. Freedom, she had imagined, would feel like flying. Instead, it felt like falling. Without Michael to talk to, without the rhythm of their life together, she found herself alone, not just in her apartment, but in her own skin. The friends who filled her weekends faded. The activities that promised fulfillment felt hollow. She had run towards something that turned out to be nothing. 6 months later, she called. They met at a coffee shop on a rainy day, and pay attention to that detail, because rain feels like regret sounds, and she told him what he already knew. She had made a mistake, not a small one, the kind of mistake that takes 30 years to understand. And here is where the story could go soft. Here is where Michael could forgive and rebuild, and they could write a redemption narrative. But Michael understood something that takes most people a lifetime to learn. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can forgive someone their cruelty and still not invite them back into your heart. You can understand their pain and still protect yourself from it. When Linda asked if they could try again, Michael didn't say yes. He said something much more powerful. He said, "I forgive you, but forgiveness isn't the same as starting over. I've learned to live again. I can't be your second choice just because the world didn't meet your expectations." That's the real ending of this story. Not a happy ending where they ride off into the sunset, but an ending where Michael survives, where he claims his own life back, where he understands that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. Your name in the comments. I'm waiting to hear it.